Hello, Internet. This is Kopitiam Council once again. We are recording on 15th of September right now. Just Hari Malaysia in advance to all of you. But probably when you're watching this, it is on 16th of September. Before we go on into Hari Malaysia, because that's the next topic that we're going to talk about. First on, traditionally, we always go for the international affair first. And there are few countries, Adi, that comes up to mind when it comes to current issues. So where we should start from?
I don't know, Haffisz. It's been a very amazing and crazy past 2-3 weeks happening around the world. Like about 4 or 5 countries have experienced all kinds of civil unrest, all kinds of turmoil, all kinds of uncertainty. I think we've talked about Indonesia the other day. In a way, it's sort of being on the way to being handled, I'd say, with Prabowo having to make a lot of concessions and then having to shake up the parliamentary lineup and all that. So I think for Indonesia, that is sort of coming down to simmering down. But I think the elephant in the room here, Haffiz, is the explosive episode we've seen in Nepal. We saw that a huge wave of protesters were able to oust the government and burning down the parliament building, right? And apparently this is all panned and coordinated by online on Discord by a few Gen Z protesters. And that's I mean, what to make of it? Because I think there was a lot for Nepal. It's no secret that corruption is rampant in Nepal. And I think when they tried to censor or tried to block social media platforms on Nepal, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Of course, now, if they wanted to be a Gen Z thing, Gen Z, they live and breathe social media, and to take that away is like taking away a basic necessity like water or food, right? It's essentially, they're both correlated with each other. So, seeing how it is with Nepal, usually I would be quite I wouldn't say I would be quite worried when I see a lot of unrest and turmoil like this. But I think in Nepal's case, right, I feel like, well, it's the same feeling I had with Bangladesh. We talked about a few months back. Is that I think it was necessary for what's happening in Nepal. Like change was needed. Nepal has been experiencing a lot of stagnation. The earthquake a few years ago has really shaken up the country, and to this day the country is still in economic strife, right? So I think with those conditions in mind, it's no surprise to see that young Nepalese people who are very disenfranchised, have no hope and confidence in their government, decided to take matters into their own hands. And to burn the parliament building, it just shows how much that outrage has been inflamed, literally speaking.
I mean, in principle, Adi, these protests like this are very essential. I mean, it's so essential that we actually covered it in most countries. And when we talk about Nepal today, it feels like a deja vu when we talk about, like you mentioned, Bangladesh and recently in Indonesia as well. I would like to say the framework also like a bit the same, where people thought, when the police ran over a protester and then resulting in a death, that's the reason why people go to protest. But no, that's the tipping point. Just like in Nepal, social media ban is the turning point where they becomes more violent, because it's like a pressure cooker. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens decades of, like you mentioned, corruptions, which is nowadays made even worse with social media. All the, showing all these photos of ex-leaders and leaders' daughters and sons of flaunting their wealth. So, it's same old, books that we see. These are the criteria that you need to check on in order for you to be on the street protesting. So if you ask me, is it a surprise it happens in Nepal? No, it's not a surprise. But it is a surprise in the manner it took place, because some of the ministers get thrown out to the river, and we can see clearly he's struggling for his life to that level. I am a proponent of democracy and anti-corruption, but I'm not so sure to that level, because, you know, as much as we want justice, democracy being upheld, the values of democracy being upheld, but to do a personal injury, to a physical injury to someone, is, I think, they cross the line.
Yeah, I think that is quite a hard argument to make as well, because some people in their emotions very high, passions run high. It seems very justified to think that that is the best treatment to give people who have been involved in corruption for so long, right? And I'm not making the argument that promoting this, right? But I can see what are the emotions that lead people into taking such drastic action, such reprehensible action, and stripping the dignity of people. They feel are their enemy essentially. They feel that they're an enemy. So I mean, it really is a subjective point of view. A lot of people would say that's horrible. A lot of people say, well, it's much deserved, right? But at the end of the day, I think we have to follow a principle here, right? When you say, I think I agree with you on this regardless, is that democracy is supposed to be practiced in a fair and equitable manner, and there's no need to go too far. I mean, once removed from power, I mean, that's the best that can be done, right? And then, well, you see that with the protesters, they are able to exercise some kind of nominal authority to try select a new leader, to select a leader that they find that will help lead Nepal better, right? But regardless, I think there was one of the organizers said that, okay, maybe we are getting a bit too far. And I think this is what the paranoia when it comes to protests and riots comes about, is that because there's so many people out on the streets, so many people who have different levels of outrage and anger, right? Sometimes you do have some actors who would take advantage of it to enact even more violence, right? Enact even more carnage, right? And that could spread and go even further. So it's not exactly maybe the act itself, right? But it's the potential for it to go further out of hand, right? When we look at, I'm not going to call it, I don't know if I want to call it revolution, but we've seen revolutions in the past, right? Any kind of revolution is always most of them, I would say, is quite bloody. And usually it comes to a point where it's not because the people, it's because moderation becomes a peripheral consideration, right? Once you're at that level, who cares about being in moderation, right? We're here to enact just what we feel is righteous fury, right? Righteous justice. So that was the worry that a lot of revolutions go through, and potentially, if we look at several revolutions in the past as well, is that once the revolutionaries come into power, they start to fall into the mundane trappings of bureaucracy and mediocrity themselves. They themselves will enact their own reign of terror to make sure that they can maintain control over they themselves. And it's very rare do you see revolutionaries return power back to the people, right? Usually they would find themselves consolidating power amongst themselves and amongst their own clique, right? Or you see a lot of paranoia, and then you have this establishment of security forces to counter any kind of counter-revolutionary forces, right? Or pro-authoritarian. I mean, it can always lead to something authoritarian, and I hope for Nepal that doesn't become the case, right? We've seen it so far be quite responsible when it comes to Bangladesh, right? We don't see any despot or authoritarian taking over there. So maybe through learning from Bangladesh's case, Nepal would be able to avoid that.
Talking about learning from other people's case, I think we're going to talk a bit further for that when we cover France and UK, because I see some interesting tactics being done by protesters over there. Also, Adi, this is maybe unofficial news, but Nepal is the first country in the world who elected their prime minister through Discord. Chatting app. So it's an interesting way of how democracy works in Nepal. You know, like they can't convene in the parliament because there's no parliament. There's no parliament building. So I guess Discord with a few bunch of youth doing a poll voting over there, and then select their prime minister from there, which is a former chief justice. So also rightly someone who has a merit as well. So that's Nepal. I think we should move quickly to Japan.
All right, so Japan came as a surprise. You saw that the resignation of Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and we have seen a wave of anti-immigration protests. Now, I don't think Japan is alone in this. We've seen anti-immigration rallies and protests coming up across a lot of parts of the world, especially in the Western world, right? And what do you make of this for Japan? Because I was there about a few months back, and what I saw was a pro-Palestine rally. So I was surprised to see that a anti-immigration rally and a right-wing demonstration was happening on the news. What do you think of this?
I mean, similarly, Adi, this is one of the most turbulent period of Japanese politics, because in the last less than 5 years, Ishiba is the third prime minister Japan has. So it's no surprise. On top of that, with the slush funding scandal and also the Unification Church as well, LDP is in a very, very rough water right now. So if you are the captain of the ship, Adi, nothing much you can do. This is one of the situations that you can just weather the things out, and so Ishiba is just in a bad place. I think he's just holding on to almost a year to complete the negotiations with Trump, which is he did. And after that, rightly so, he said, I'm stepping down. So it's no surprise Ishiba is just there to take care what he can do, because the pressure left, right, and center is enormous for people from inside his own party that wants him out. So there's no greater pressure than that. But I just want to go a little bit deep, like how I think I can see Japan compared to other country get out of this situation. Because in my opinion, it is very easy for Japan if they just gave up the so-called alliance with the West. Because if Japan welcomes China in its orbit, what it can do is for two things, to solve two biggest things that Japan currently has, which is economic issue and security. Let me touch on economic first. When Japan started become one of the second biggest economy in the world, starting in 1980s, Japan was projected to be the biggest economy in the world by maybe 2010. But it never happened. It's stagnant since then. Japan has all the potential, the technology, the human resources, the knowledge, the skill, everything. Just look at the automotive industry. It's huge. No one compares to them. But that's only true 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Right now, China with EV and any other advancement, new kind of technology, AI, whatever, you never heard Japan was mentioned in the same sentence anymore. So China is the so-called emerging power or there already. But Japan, for them to save themselves, I think it's better to switch alliance to Chinese in order for them to save their industry. Otherwise, it's gonna be a sinking ship that keeps sinking. If they can put aside their ego, the so-called we colonized the Chinese in 1931, so why should we go to them and begging for mercy? If they can put that aside, they can save the economy. But will they do it? Will pride take over? Maybe. I don't know. Japanese people are very proud. Secondly, it also helped with their security. you were having a neighbor of China and North Korea. It's just separated by the strait. It's impossible for you to rely on United States, even though they do have a lot of American army base in the region, Taiwan and Japan and Philippines. But it's still, it's not as 100% guarantee. Why don't you just come in, be at least neutral, not not against China, and they can maintain their pacifistic policy. They don't have to go on the offense in order to maintain their borders, whatnot. So that's, I think, for Japan to look to. Otherwise, it's gonna be a troubling period ahead of them.
I mean, getting Japan and China to work together will always be a it's going to be a mountainous challenge, uphill battle, very difficult challenge. And regardless, Japan still has to contend with China in a way. And that's why I think Japan's always been all open to containment strategies that are provided mostly by the West, and sometimes through socialization and confidence building for ASEAN, right? Japan's always been willing to partner up with Southeast Asian countries to find a way to socialize and make China more responsible, but at the same time containing them so that they don't get too big. But we see that Japanese markets as well, they're trying to especially pop culture. They've always been trying to find a foothold in China. One is also to preempt any kind of theft of intellectual property, like if Chinese companies wants to steal any property from Japan in terms of media properties. Japan's now thinking of going on the offensive, saying, okay, since they want so bad, they steal it so bad, why don't we open our market why do we open a market over there for them? But I think I want to go back to the recent, because this is I wouldn't say it's a Japanese phenomenon, Haffiz. I think this is a very global phenomenon that we've seen for the past 10, 15 years, is that this whole, the rise of the right wing, right, and right wing politics, right, and especially far right politics. I think Japan is under that, is being enthralled by that quite at a certain degree, like the Sanseito party, the do-it-yourself party, having 14 seats of the and in the national diet, right, and the third highest share of any party, right, riding on the coattails of not on the coattails, riding on the fact that the LDP's influence itself is waning, shows that maybe Japan is gearing up for a new brand of politics, which is the populist kind, which is very much we have to thank American President Donald Trump for popularizing and making even more of a very attractive and kind of branding strategy, right, to appeal to very real economic insecurities and paranoia that people are having. Because this is what the whole world is facing, Hafiz. I think the entire world is going through an economic slump. There is a lot of rises in living costs across the board, not just in Malaysia, not just in Japan, not just in the West, but across the world. And this is the prime opportunity for people to make use of it, to try to summon that, to weaponize that insecurity, to weaponize that lack of confidence, to go against government, right? At the same time, with all these economic hardships and uncertainties, confidence in government, confidence in the state is fast eroding, right? We've seen, like we mentioned just now, Nepal, Indonesia, Japan is also seeing the same situation with the whole. They did go through the financial crisis, and they have the lost decade now becoming the lost generation, right? An entire generation of economic hardship where wages are not going up. Same goes for the UK as well. We are missing out on an entire generation of economic growth, and well, you can lay the blame on a lot of things. You can lay the blame on bad policies. You can lay the blame on external factors. So you can blame it on instability, right? Someone's going to blame something, and I think the best scapegoat is what Japan is, the right wing in Japan is rallying behind these days, which is anti-immigration, right? They're becoming more and more protectionist, becoming more stricter on migrant regulation, right? Because it's easy now to scapegoat migrants as a cause for economic hardship, right? Because but instead it is more of a symptom rather, and because well, the idea is that you want for Japan, I think, is because they have the aging population, right? So they need, and none of the Japanese people are procreating at a sustainable rate. So they need to bring in more people to fill up the labor shortages and labor pool, right? But at the same time, it's because it's cheaper as well, right? It's easier to import foreign labor, outsource labor, and it's Americans have done this with China. Now they're doing it with Bangladesh. China's doing it with it's also doing its own form of outsourcing as well. So it's a lot of factors in, and people, and I guess for Japan, especially the right wing, they decided to put it on migrants. So they're going to make a more stricter regulation where family reunification policies would be very, very strict. Naturalization processes would be very difficult as well. So I don't know how that they would want to see that play out. But if they're not also doing something to curb the aging population or the that low fertility rate, then it seems that it's going to be going nowhere.
Well, talking about immigration, let's move on to France, where it's also part of it. But more importantly, in France, it's more of like a Japan as well, because in the last 3-4 years, I think there's a lot. I think at least 3 different prime minister and 5 overall under Macron during his time. So it's interesting that Sebastian Lecornu is one of the longest serving cabinet minister, now become the prime minister. This is another persistent attitude from Macron to just doesn't want to listen to the other side, to actually pick someone from a different coalition and make it prime minister. But he insisted on his loyalists. And again and again and again, I don't know what he was thinking, appointing Lecornu also, because if he can last another 6 months, I'll be impressed. Because the way things are going with the rising pressure from far right, especially when Marine Le Pen says, the only reason that we are in this situation is because of Macron. So if Macron at one point wake up the next day and thinking, let's call for election, I think he will lose badly. His party will lose very, very badly.
I haven't really caught up with the whole French side of things. I think the last time I really paid attention to France was when we did that one episode last year at Station Podcast when it comes to the elections, right? Well, I mean, I'm going to just be quite general about this as well. Is that France has also been quite a pickle, not knowing what seems to be doing as well. And well, it's the whole. I think the whole coalition itself is showing it's the idea of the coalition, right? We've seen that with the LDP, and we've seen here is that coalition forming when it tries to form coalitions on a moderate front, right? Trying to appease it on the right and the left side, right, of politics. It always seems to be end up shifting more towards the right, doesn't it? It seems to be in a way center right anytime when someone tries to be the moderating voice, especially when it came to Macron's dealings with trying to maintain political stability, political unity. So I don't know how this will if we will even he'll be able to last in his political survival will be ensured, right? And it's you saw like with how a lot of young people in France taking up more right wing sentiments, right, becoming more radicalized, and maybe I don't know if that's right also, or maybe it's just always been that kind of sentiment there. I mean, this is not something that France is new to France, right? They've been having this very awkward situation for the past 5 years already, 7 years. So I don't know what to make of it, to be honest.
I mean, we touch on what the Nepali protesters could learn from other people doing protests. I mean, you can learn from France is that if you really angry towards your politicians, whatnot, maybe you can smear or shower their buildings with cow dungs and whatnot, because that's what they've been doing in the protest. And also, the protest sparked on 10th of September, which they call block everything. So what they do is just they block everything to make everything is conveniences for everyone's, and of course police have to come in. So that's where they try to annoy as much as possible without actually inflicting any injuries to any particular persons or buildings. So I think that's more clever way, because if the French people keep demolishing some buildings or whatever, I think there will be no buildings left in next year or whatever, because there's a lot of, like you mentioned, there's a lot of protests at least in the last 5 years, and of course France is one of the famous country for its protests, people's protests on the street. Shall we cover UK?
All right, over across the channel. Oh, what can I say about England right now? The resignation of a deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, parliamentary cabinet reshuffle under the Labour government, and now we saw another turnout, a huge turnout of anti-immigration protests in London. They say about 100,000, right? Not a very good year so far for Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. I mean, for Angela Rayner's resignation over something as underpaying, I believe, stamp duties on taxes, I believe, and it's not a good sign for because one could see it as, at least the UK for these things they would resign over, right? Over here in Malaysia it would take a miracle for anyone whoever resigns, right, after how many scandals, right? But at the same time, it damages a lot of confidence that's already very low with the UK government, right? Not just the Labour Party itself, but also just in general, right? Not talking about any particular party. And in this kind of certain uncertainty, it's easy for people to take advantage of it, right? And start scapegoating and start pointing fingers. And UK hasn't been it's been not in the best shape so far, compared to everyone else as well.
I mean, we talk Nepal, Japan, France, and now UK, Adi. I think if you put these countries in a diagram and you level them as like phases of democracy, I think UK would be the later one, because this is where after the after colonialization, all the periods of industrializations, of economic miracle, and then now you comes to the bearing the consequences of colonialism's what it you reap what you sow, because all this happened is not by accident. Like the achievement that have been made by economic miracle happens because of level people that migrating to the UK. It's not just because of the the native themselves, but now they're thinking like, because the economy not doing so well, like you mentioned, let's take who's the black sheep of the family, and they always go towards the vulnerable, the maybe marginalized immigrants. Well, when they think about people who actually stealing their jobs, do they think about Rishi Sunak when they say the same thing? No, these are the people who actually working in Tesco's or whatever, the low waging people. So there's a hypocrisy, because the people who actually organized this 110,000 protests in central London is Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson is very, very infamous for his racial remarks in the past, and he's been very persistent with that. But even now, Nigel Farage is trying to move away from him. But look, who's trying to be his buddy now? Elon Musk. He addressed the protests from using video conference from America, and says to the government that this government should be a change. First of all, he is not, he is naturalized American, but he meddling so much in American politics that he become, best buddy of the first best buddy. He coined the term first best buddy. Now he wants to meddle in English British politics next. So what is he doing now? Is he building something that we cannot see? A global alliance of network influence? I mean, he already the richest man in the world. Does he want all the power in the world as well? No, he's to become, like Thanos going all the rings. He got the ring of United States. Now he's going after a UK ring. What else? Germany ring, Japan ring. I don't understand how people in each of these countries allow overly influence like a billionaire like him and following his narrative. I mean, why out of all people you want to follow a billionaire's advice on how to run your country? The least of all people to listen to is billionaires, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see that, all this anti-immigration protests and Elon Musk himself all chanting the same kind of anti-globalist message, right? Yet you see people like, you see Elon Musk himself benefiting from globalization, from a globalized community, also trying to, and pushing being a globalist himself by lobbying with foreign leaders, international leaders. If he was so anti-globalism, right, he would have not cared to go out of South Africa and kept things over there, right? But I guess he wants to paint this whole. I think he's become too obsessed with involving himself in the whole culture war narrative and trying to paint himself as the savior of the West image, right? Which is something that a lot of I guess people like Tony Robinson is trying to push for it. But at the same time, I don't want to give any mileage also to the protest, but I did see some concerned protesters saying that, oh well, migrants have brought nothing but harm and they ruined the UK, right? I said, no, I would still disagree with that. Is that no? It's not migrants ruining the UK. It's what is it that the migrants have given a lot of benefits to the UK, economically speaking, right? They're taking the jobs no one wants to do. But at the same time, what is the UK government actually doing to make sure that these communities do work together, right? I mean, the issue is that now you have a lot of segregated communities, people like migrants living by themselves. They're not exactly the best way to integrate them, right? Because the whole idea is that, are we integrating, not, I wouldn't say like to British culture, but integrating so that, you can create a more cosmopolitan unit, right? Like you see a lot of parts in London, you see a lot of mingling, a lot of diversity and people mingling together to create their own melting pot. But slowly I see in a lot of people it's becoming more segregated, more people having their own communes. It's almost like their own communes or just like own sectors and own areas, which is not, I think, most conducive. And I think because of that is why you have people taking advantage of scapegoating, right? Saying that, they're all far away from us. It's hard to say that, they're people as well, no, they're far away, those dirty people over there, we don't like them. It's this kind of segregation that's not the best. So best way to integrate with what you want to bring new and more migrants coming to the UK, right, to power the economy, to serve as labor, right? So that is something that I think most governments have quite failed in doing. They've come off as either as what's it called, as either not trying at all or trying too hard that it alienates. It alienates everybody. To be honest, it doesn't do anything for local Brits. It doesn't do anything for the communities themselves. It comes off as too forced and not an organic development, right? Where people work together, people eat and live together and stuff like that. So it wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't, because of that kind of separation. It's no surprise that people like Tony Robinson would rally people behind the whole, grooming gang scandals that's committed by migrants, right? It's no surprise that it's easy to get people fired up over these issues, right? Because it's people not interacting with one another, right? People understanding that, hey, this is not all migrants are like this, and say, hey, not all British people are like this as well, right? So it's like fostering that not flattening everyone to be the same. Is making sure that everyone is able to live together. And but then again, that experiment has always been very difficult in most multicultural societies. Even here, we still haven't figured it out, right, Haffisz? So,
yeah.
a lot of things to be said.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, what we can learn from this is like these are the stages that we're gonna go through, and Malaysia may be slightly ahead of Nepal, where we confront our demons back in 2018, and it happened. Some changes happen now. Currently, changes is taking place, but will it last for longer? Will it become a realization on what the reforms that we want? It's still up for a debate. So I don't know. When we see in Malaysia, and it is the Malaysia Day, and it's a good transition we go to that discussion.
I guess, well, I saw a lot of young Malaysians looking at what's going on in Indonesia, Nepal, and to an extent, the Philippines is going through something as well. And they're starting to get ideas of, uncertainty and unhappiness in Malaysia as well. Hopefully it doesn't come all the way to that. Hopefully the government of the day is able to listen to the people and understand the people's concerns and mitigate any kind of outrage, right? So we still have a chance to mitigate any kind of violence and still say that, hey, we're listening to the people, we want to give the best to the people. So the ball really is in our the Prime Minister's court right now. If he is the international personality that he likes to put himself out to be, then he would be paying very close attention to what is happening across the world, especially in Nepal and Indonesia.
I mean, we did mention when we talk about American tariff, Donald Trump's tariff, we said that when America sneeze, everyone get the flu. So I hope Malaysia have a very good immune system. And let's talk about Malaysia in the next episode.